Our new book this week, Powerboat Racer by Thomas Hollyday. Harry Jacobson, disgraced failure of a foreign correspondent, fired from a respected New York City paper. Disheartened, he takes refuge as editor for a small weekly in a quiet town on the Chesapeake. The most excitement he sees is when a trio of children come across the sunken hulk of a racing boat lost 30 years ago. The black captain, Walker John Douglas, had crashed his vessel after killing 2 women and burning down half the town in a period of racial unrest. Harry's investigative reporter instincts kick in, and he begins to delve into the history of Walker and the infamous Inferno. River Sunday, evenly split between black and white, roils in chaos at his front page headlines. Half the town welcomes the fresh exploration of the civil rights actions, while the other half would rather leave the past alone. The streets are also flooding with tourists as the largest event of the season, a nationally acclaimed Powerboat Race Festival, swells the discussion with high-profile personalities and racers who remember Walker's racially charged legacy. As Harry unravels the threads of time and reveals the truth of what happened during the racial clashes of the 60s, the heat levels rise in the once peaceful town. Passionate emotions threaten to spark a fresh wave of riots, the likes of which River Sunday had not seen in decades. Harry races to discover the full story in time to save lives and to save the town from burning anew. Critical review. At first, when I picked this book up from the shelf, I wondered what to expect. The cover didn't seem to draw me in as much as other covers do. This is always something I make note of, even when, like in this case, the cover ended up being quite fitting for the book. And I have to admit, it wasn't the kind of book that jumped out at me from page 1 or even page 2. I can usually finish a book in a couple hours, depending on how long they are, of course. But sometimes, when they seem slightly boring, I tend to start doing other things and come back to it later, which was what I thought I would be doing with this book. But it really started to pick up after a few pages, and you start to get to know the main character well. Harry Jacobson is a regular guy with a regular life. He is an editor for a small weekly paper in the Chesapeake. Harry's from New York, and recently was fired from an investigative reporter job, which seemed to embarrass and upset him pretty much. So he decided to leave the Big Apple for a much quieter town in Maryland. Like many other towns, not much really happens there, except anything real interesting. When a few teens come across a hunkin' hulk of a racing boat that was 30 years old, he didn't really expect near what he got from this small town story. The book really starts to take off and ends up being about Walker John Douglas and the 2 women he killed 30 years earlier, burnt down half the town, and crashed his vessel. There were a lot of parts of this book that reminded me a lot of a longtime favorite of mine, To Kill a Mockingbird. Not that the author tried to redo that story by any means, but it is a similar type of book. Racism and racial unrest are a common issue in the world, 30 years ago and today. I admire this author for writing such a book, due to the fact that not everybody would accept it, nor would they want to read a book about racial unrest. But this shouldn't upset anybody, as it is written very well, very carefully and professionally. Harry's presence in this little town and his investigations of what was once thought and believed to be true about this ordeal ends up really stirring the place up, and ends up being quite a suspenseful book. The way this book was written fascinated me, since it started so slowly and ends up being a story you wish would never end. I've read many books through my life, and this is truly one of a kind in this sense. I often say never judge a book by its cover, and I apologize if you read my book reviews and you may have seen this said before, but this is one of those books. You may look just like a book about racing boats, but there is much more to this book.